Grand Prix. To be fair, we watched the Moto GP as well, which arguably was probably a bit more exciting than the actual Monaco Grand Prix. But I'm going to take us outside. This is just literally my initial thoughts after Monaco Grand Prix, because I'm at my brother's. Don't know if I'm going to be able to get everything down in time. Obviously, we're going to do the driver rankings, which is good. So, Monaco. Well done to Lando Norris. What an absolutely star-studded, amazing race. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. From there, right there. Cool. So, Lando Norris wins the Monaco Grand Prix, and that is something that he absolutely needed to do. He deserved to win the Monaco Grand Prix. These days, you just kind of win it at a canter, don't you? It's nothing amazing. The two pit stop things I thought worked really well, but let's focus on Lando for now. So we got pole position. He did, as Leclerc said, they lost it, as in the people, lost it after qualifying, which you kind of have to agree. Yeah, you did they did kind of lose it. Lando got, I'd probably say 60 to 70% of the job done. Wow, it's really windy, isn't it? So, taking that, I'm sure you watched it, is the initial away from Lando was very good. Then, sadly, it was in the second phase of the start that Charles Leclerc ended up getting away, and he got away much better than poor old Lando, poor young Lando compared to Leclerc. It's really windy. I don't even. And then after the initial start, alongside, and I thought at one point that Lando Norris was going to come out of that first corner second. And when you looked at the F2 race, yes, it was an absolute disaster at the start. But significantly, if you looked at the F2 race, what happened was the guy in second got the better start. And I think coming from all Lando fans, they would have been equally nervous about getting a bad start. And ultimately, let's be fair, he did, but it wasn't bad enough. He locked up his tyres, and I completely agree. At that point, he absolutely had to get into that first corner first, because if he didn't, in hindsight now, that would have been the race over. It would have been absolute race over for Lando Norris. He locked up, he made sure he got to the first corner first, and then luckily McLaren did not do anything stupid with the strategy, which makes a change when you look at the Japanese Grand Prix and the aptly named Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Not particularly great. So moving on from that, people at the back ended up pitting, and we all thought, for the first of the two pit stops, we all thought, oh no, that's going to be really, really testing. Okay, now after that, we all thought, oh, they're in it, they're going to win it. But people were not holding each other up at this point. The field spread was a lot bigger than before, because people were some holding each other up, some of them were absolutely going for it. Now, that meant people like, I think, Behrman, what initially looked like a good strategy didn't end up being particularly great. You've got to look at Ferrari. They tried to do everything right. Ultimately, once again, the race was lost, as it normally always is, on the Saturday qualifying, with Charles Leclerc finishing, I think, still a very solid P2. He just missed the pole position. We're talking, smidges, probably by the length of a tyre. He missed P1. And I think Ferrari, in terms of both him and Hamilton, did everything. One disappointing thing, to be fair, now we're talking about Ferrari, is Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, finishing fifth, not too bad. But I thought at one point he pitted towards the end of the race. He pitted, and he would have had much newer tyres than Max Verstappen, who at that point was leading. He wasn't going particularly fast. He was almost trying to push Leclerc into Lando, but the problem is that Max Verstappen had to be careful. Max Verstappen could not have afforded to lose much time. Sadly, for Lewis Hamilton fans. I think he must have been aware of this because he didn't lose much time to Lewis. And to be fair, Lewis didn't even make a dent. I think he actually lost about 10 seconds after his last pit stop. He had all this free air. So from a Hamilton point of view, that was really, really disappointing. Moving on then from Lewis Hamilton, we've got Oscar Piastri, who all over the weekend looked to have the legs on Lando, it felt, in the practice sessions, obviously in spite of having whoops at ages. And it really wasn't until Q2 and Q3 that we saw how good Lando Norris was on that qualifying lap. The lap where he absolutely had to say that he did, Oscar Piastri didn't, which is why Oscar Piastri started third, which is now, in hindsight, obviously, why Oscar Piastri finished third. So, moving on from that, we have Max Verstappen. Now, Max was outclassed, outgunned. The Red Bull he wasn't particularly happy with. He just couldn't get on with it. During the race, during the race, I think he was out of the top four. He definitely was the fourth fastest car. In qualifying, in the practice sessions, Max Verstappen actually looked good. It looked like potentially he could challenge for both pole and then maybe the win. But then when things got real in Q3, he just didn't have enough either in the tank, whether it was Max Verstappen or the car. I imagine, obviously, as with all these things, it was probably a mixture of both, and the fact that Max Verstappen was not happy with the way he set the car, with the car in terms of, at Monaco, you have to be confident in the car. You really, really have to be confident, and that's something that Max Verstappen, I don't think was. Hence him finishing fourth. Now let's talk about some of the team tactics that happened at Monaco. One of them in particular was both from the Racing Bulls and the Williams team. We knew there were going to be some villains. To be fair to James Vowles, he even admitted this is not how I like to go racing, but in terms of the championship, obviously they need the points. So he decided that was the only way they could go racing, which I don't have an issue with, because making people stop twice at Monaco, naturally this was going to happen. So fair play, I guess, in a way, to Liam Lawson, playing the team game, holding everyone up, so Isaac Hadjar could have a clean run to absolutely an awesome top 10 position. And obviously, Williams did it too, with both Albon and Sainz. Now, the big losers of the day, for me, personally, were Mercedes. Yes, in qualifying, kind of embarrassing. I mean, they qualified badly. You can't really blame George Russell. There's a problem with the car. He stopped for a McDonald's in the tunnel. But with Kimi Antonelli, yeah, he's a rookie. You can blame him, but you can't turn around and be too surprised. His first time in F1 at Monaco, and we're talking when he clipped that barrier. I think it's the Nouvelle chicane coming out of that tunnel in qualifying. We're talking he clipped it by the nearest of margins, but it was hard enough and fast enough to destroy his suspension, or destroy his tyre at the very least, and obviously he could go no further. Now the issue for that Mercedes had, unlike the other teams around them, they were trying something different. Mercedes just stuck on the hard tyres, and then they were like, yeah, this is it, we're just going to kind of do this for the next 60 laps. When it was obvious from even the start of the weekend that if you're at the back, you had to do something different. But Mercedes didn't really do anything different. To be fair, George Russell did take it in his hands and absolutely just Mario Kart shortcutted coming out of the chicane to get ahead of Albon, who in turn Albon was doing some non-Albon naughty-esque tactics to really slow down to the point where they nearly had a collision, which wasn't great. Absolutely not great at all. So moving on from that, George Russell ended up getting a drive-through penalty. And what I thought was interesting about this drive-through penalty was, normally it's a 5-second penalty or 10-second penalty. You know, you're meant to give the place back. And the deal was, at Monaco, and only at Monaco, this was kind of like exclusive to Monaco from the stewards, was if you were to completely miss the chicane coming out the tunnel, basically long dart it through, and then gain an advantage, you had to give it back by the next corner. So after that chicane, if you've ever seen Monaco or played it in any games, there's got quite a short straight to the left hander. I think it's called Portier, and he had to give it back by then. So you probably have about 5-6 seconds to give it back. You get back. The interesting thing is, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but they gave George Russell a drive-through penalty for knowingly taking that advantage and carrying on. Why then, in spite of George Russell getting that penalty. You got to look to Saudi Arabia, where Christian Horner afterwards made it fairly obvious that Max Verstappen wasn't going to let them go, was not going to let Oscar Piastri go, because clearly clean air was king of Saudi Arabia. Why was it Max just given a 10-second penalty and not a drive-through? Now, with a drive-through, I think back in the day, I think it's still the case, you have, I think, around 3 laps to do the drive-through. And I think drive-through penalties, when it comes to such obvious skullduggery, you have to, I think at that point, consider drive-throughs when it's not kind of been an accident, when it's been, I'm clearly taking advantage, because within 3 laps, the naughty driver then gets out of the way, and then the good driver can carry on. Anyway, absolute zero for Mercedes. I mean, there was no inspiration there. They even, I remember the director even looking at Toto Wolff at some point, and even shaking his head at the TV camera, which you can't really blame anyone at all, can you?